"The veil protects us both," Duke Alexander said. Vivienne stood beneath the chandeliers, while servants prepared to unveil the new portrait of Redbourne. In the painting, her scar had vanished. Her face had been pushed into shadow, and her husband stood before her as though she were merely part of the furniture behind him. Lord Cedric smiled at the assembled court. A diplomatic household must present an image people can trust. Alexander reached for Vivienne's veil when she attempted to remove it. Not tonight. She looked at the man who once kissed the scar and called it proof that she had survived. Then Vivienne stepped away from his hand. "You do not use this veil to protect me," she said. "You use it to protect yourself from being seen beside me." Before the entire court, the Duchess removed the veil. Then she pulled the false portrait from its stand. The gilded frame struck the marble floor. Glass shattered beneath Alexander's feet. No one in the Redbourne gallery moved. The portrait lay face up between them, exposing its dishonesty more clearly from the floor. Alexander stood in full ceremonial dress, his hand resting upon a marble column. Vivienne had been placed behind him, her face softened into shadow, her scar erased beneath an artificial perfection she had never requested. Lord Cedric Wickliffe was the first to speak. "Your Grace, this display is beneath you." Vivienne looked at him without covering her face. "No, Lord Cedric. The painting is beneath me." The guests stared openly now. 2 years earlier, their attention would have frightened her. The scar began near her left temple and curved across her cheekbone. It was pale, narrow, and impossible to miss beneath the chandeliers. Vivienne had survived a carriage, overturning on a rain-soaked road. A broken window had cut her face. Alexander had sat beside her through the night while the physician stitched the wound. When she first saw herself afterwards, she had turned from the mirror. Alexander had taken her hand. "You are alive," he said. "Nothing on your face could make me value that less." Later, when the wound healed, he kissed the scar. For several months, Vivienne believed survival had changed nothing between them. Then society returned. At her first dinner after the accident, conversation stopped when she entered. One woman stared so long that her husband apologized. Another praised Alexander for remaining devoted, as though his marriage had become an act of charity. Lord Cedric approached Alexander after the meal. "A light veil may spare the Duchess unnecessary attention." Alexander rejected the suggestion immediately. Vivienne heard him. "My wife will not cover her face because others lack manners." She loved him fiercely for those words, but 3 weeks later, Cedric raised the matter again. Alexander was being considered for an important diplomatic appointment. His household would be expected to receive foreign delegations and represent British interests abroad. Cedric spoke of public confidence, visual dignity, and the burden placed upon political families. This time, Alexander asked Vivienne to wear the veil for one reception, only until society finds something else to discuss. She agreed. One evening became several. Then the veil appeared beside every formal gown prepared for her. Helena Ashcombe, Dowager Duchess of Redbourne, instructed the dressmaker to make it longer. "Subtlety is a kindness," she said. "To whom?" Vivienne asked. Helena did not answer. The veil eventually became a rule no one admitted creating. Vivienne's chair moved farther from Alexander during dinners. Her name disappeared from official invitations. Lady Eleanor, Alexander's younger sister, began receiving important guests in her place. Whenever Vivienne protested, Alexander called the changes temporary. "Cedric is watching everything." "Then let him watch me." This appointment could allow us to influence treaties, trade, and prison reform. And my face threatens all of that? Not your face, the reaction to it. Vivienne had looked at him across the breakfast table, then challenged the reaction. Do not discipline my face. Alexander said nothing. Silence had gradually become his preferred answer. Now, in the gallery, that silence returned. Vivienne stood before the fallen portrait, while more than 100 guests waited for Alexander to defend either his wife or the lie painted behind her. He looked at the shattered glass. You should not have done that publicly. You approved it publicly. It was intended for the embassy. It was intended to replace me. Lord Cedric stepped between them. The portrait presents continuity and strength. Vivienne pointed towards the painted figure behind Alexander. That woman possesses neither a scar nor a name. She is not strong, she is convenient. Helena approached with a servant carrying the discarded veil. Put this back on before the situation becomes irreparable. Vivienne looked at the woman who had slowly removed her from every public room in her own home. The situation became irreparable when my husband signed his name beneath that painting. She turned to Alexander. Did you approve the changes? His hesitation confirmed what she already knew. I approved the final composition. Did you see the first version? Yes. And in that version, was I seated beside you? Yes. Was my face uncovered? Yes. Was the scar visible? Alexander's voice lowered. Yes. Vivienne nodded. The pain was sharper because he did not lie. You did not fail to notice what they erased. You authorized it. Cedric gave a quiet sigh. This is precisely the emotional instability we wish to avoid. Vivienne turned towards him. You altered a woman's face, lowered her chair, and removed her name. Yet I am unstable because I noticed. Several guests looked away. Vivienne faced the room. This portrait will not represent the House of Redbourne. My name will not appear beneath it. If it is displayed anywhere, I will publicly state that it was created without my consent. Alexander stepped closer. Vivienne, we will discuss this privately. No, her voice did not rise. You have loved me privately and hidden me publicly. I will not continue every important conversation where no one can witness your answer. She left the gallery without replacing the veil. This time, Alexander did not follow. Vivienne did not leave Redbourne House. She moved into the eastern apartments. The decision unsettled the household more than a dramatic departure would have done. She remained the Duchess of Redbourne. She ate beneath the same roof, walked through the same gardens, and answered correspondence bearing the family crest. But she ended every shared social duty. She would not receive Alexander's guests. She would not sit for another corrected portrait. She would not wear a veil. She would not stand beside him merely to reassure society that their marriage remained undamaged. 3 days later, Alexander sent a ruby necklace. Vivienne returned it. The following week, a parcel arrived containing a veil of fine French lace. She sent that back as well. Then came the name of a physician in Paris who claimed he could reduce scars. Vivienne wrote one sentence beneath the recommendation. You continue trying to repair my face, because repairing your conduct would cost you more. Alexander came to the eastern drawing room that evening. He found her reading beside an uncovered window. You misunderstand why I suggested the physician. No, I understand perfectly. I thought the choice might give you confidence. Vivienne closed the book. I had confidence before you taught this house to treat my face as a problem. That is unfair. Was the veil my idea? No. Was the altered portrait? No. Was removing my name from the embassy invitations. Alexander looked towards the fire. I did not know about every invitation. But you knew I had stopped attending. He moved closer. I am trying to secure a position from which I could do genuine good. And how much of me must disappear before your goodness becomes possible? You speak as though I have ceased loving you. Vivienne's expression softened, but only with grief. That is what makes this worse. He looked at her. You tell me I am beautiful when no one can hear you. You touch my scar when the doors are closed. But the moment another person enters, you search for the veil. Alexander opened his mouth. No answer came. Vivienne rose. I do not need you to convince me I am beautiful. I need to know whether you possess the courage to be seen believing it. She left him alone in the eastern drawing room. 2 mornings later, Lady Eleanor arrived carrying a wrapped canvas. She locked the door before placing it on Vivienne's table. Clara Bell asked me to give you this. Vivienne removed the covering. It was the original sketch. In it, she sat beside Alexander, not behind him. Her head was turned towards the viewer, her scar visible in the natural light. One hand rested upon the arm of her chair. The other lay close to Alexander's, their fingers almost touching. Clara had painted neither pity nor defiance. She had painted a woman who belonged exactly where she sat. Vivienne touched the edge of the paper. This was what she intended. Yes. Eleanor placed a bundle of letters beside it. Cedric ordered the changes. Mother added instructions of her own. Vivienne read them. Move the Duchess farther behind his grace. Reduce the appearance of the mark upon her cheek. The veil should obscure enough of the face to avoid distraction. The final instruction bore Alexander's signature beneath the word. Approved. Vivienne closed her eyes. Eleanor sat opposite her. I believed the veil was harmless. So did I. I should have spoken sooner. You should have. Eleanor accepted the rebuke. There is more. Clara had included sketches of other discarded portraits. A retired officer whose damaged hand had been hidden behind a book. An elderly woman whose face had been painted 30 years younger. A labor organizer whose rough hands had been replaced with elegant gloves. A widow whose walking cane had been removed because her family considered it undignified. Vivienne studied them for a long time. Her humiliation was not unique. That made it no less painful, but it made it larger than one marriage. Where is Clara now? She asked. At her studio. Cedric has threatened to cancel every official commission if she displays the original work. Vivienne wrapped the sketch again. Then we shall not display one original. Eleanor looked at her. We shall display all of them. The exhibition opened 3 weeks later under the title As We Stand. Vivienne rented a public gallery outside Redbourne Control. Clara invited artists whose work had been altered to satisfy noble families. Former soldiers, aging women, injured workers, and people excluded from official portraiture agreed to sit for new paintings. No scars were softened, no wrinkles removed, no hands concealed. Vivienne's original portrait occupied the center wall. She stood beside it without a veil, wearing a deep red gown. The queue stretched into the street. Visitors did not turn away from the portraits. They remained before them longer than they did before idealized paintings. Some wept. Others recognized their own families in the stories beneath the frames. Alexander arrived alone near closing time. Vivienne saw him from across the room, but did not go to him. He stopped before her portrait. 2 gentlemen stood nearby. One said quietly, "The scar does not diminish her." The other answered, "No. The man who hid her did." Alexander heard them. Vivienne did not defend him. He turned towards her, pain visible in his face. Before he could cross the gallery, Lord Cedric entered carrying an official envelope. He did not acknowledge the paintings. He handed the letter to Alexander. "The diplomatic appointment is yours," Cedric said, "on 4 conditions." Vivienne remained close enough to hear them. She would not attend the appointment banquet. The altered portrait would be displayed at the embassy. Alexander would publicly state that the exhibition did not represent Redbourne, and Vivienne would wear the veil at every state function. Cedric looked directly at her. "The banquet is tomorrow evening. His Grace must decide whether he represents his country or his wife's grievance." Alexander held the appointment letter. Vivienne waited. He did not reject it. Not immediately. That hesitation was enough. She walked towards the gallery doors. Alexander followed. "Vivienne, allow me one night to consider what this position could achieve." She stopped beneath the portrait in which Clara had finally placed them side by side. "How many nights must I spend disappearing while you consider whether I am worth being seen? This is not a simple choice. It has always been simple." She looked at the appointment letter in his hand. "You merely preferred when I paid the price." Vivienne left the gallery. Behind her, Cedric gave Alexander until the following evening to choose. On the wall, the Duchess's uncovered portrait remained beneath the lights. And for the first time, Alexander had to decide whether he loved the real woman enough to lose the perfect future built upon her erasure. Alexander did not sleep. The appointment letter remained unopened on his desk, while Redbourne House settled into silence around him. 4 conditions. Vivienne absent from the banquet. The altered portrait displayed at the embassy. A public statement separating Redbourne from her exhibition. A veil at every state function. Cedric had presented them as diplomatic necessities. Alexander now saw them for what they were. Instructions for erasing his wife in stages. Near midnight, Helena entered without knocking. "You must accept." Alexander remained by the window. "Did Cedric send you?" "He did not need to. This appointment has been the purpose of 3 years' work." "And Vivienne?" Helena's expression barely changed. "She remains your wife. In private, she may live comfortably, receive friends, and continue her little exhibition. No one is asking you to abandon her. They are asking me to deny her. They are asking you to govern your household." Alexander turned. "For 2 years, I have mistaken humiliation for order." Helena's mouth tightened. "You speak as though the scar is my creation." "No. The shame attached to it was, I protected this family from ridicule. You protected appearances. I helped you." She stepped closer. "You loved her before the accident. No one disputes that. But affection does not remove public consequences." Alexander looked towards the closed door leading to the eastern wing. "No, cowardice creates them." Helena understood then that she was losing control. "If you refuse, Cedric, the appointment will go to another house. Redbourne will lose influence abroad. Your enemies will say a woman's wounded pride governs you." Alexander picked up the letter. "Then they may say it." He broke the seal. At the bottom of the appointment stood a line for his acceptance. He left it blank. The following evening, the diplomatic banquet began without the Duchess of Redbourne. Cedric had arranged the ballroom to display the altered portrait at the center of the ceremonial platform. In it, Alexander stood alone in light. Vivienne remained behind him, softened into shadow beneath a painted veil. Foreign envoys, ministers, and senior members of the court filled the room. Most believed Vivienne had been excluded because of her exhibition. Others assumed illness. Helena received guests beside Alexander. "Smile," she murmured. "There is still time to behave sensibly." Alexander did not answer. Cedric approached with the final appointment document. "The announcement will be made after the first toast." "And the conditions?" "Remain unchanged." Alexander looked towards the portrait. "Have you ever met my wife without looking at her scar first?" Cedric appeared mildly amused. "Personal sentiment is not relevant tonight. That is what I have told myself for 2 years. A servant announced another arrival. The ballroom doors opened. Vivienne entered without a veil. She wore a deep red gown, the color rich beneath the chandeliers. Her scar remained entirely visible. Clara Bell walked beside her carrying the original portrait sketch, while Eleanor followed with a leather case of correspondence. The room fell silent. Helena went pale. "You were not invited." Vivienne continued forwards. "I was removed from the guest list of my own household." Cedric signaled to the attendants. "This is a state function. Escort her grace to the private apartments." No one moved immediately. Vivienne stopped before the altered portrait. "I will leave when the court understands what it has been asked to celebrate." She took the original sketch from Clara and placed it beside the finished painting. The contrast was immediate. In Clara's work, Vivienne sat beside Alexander, uncovered and equal. In the official portrait, she had been diminished until she looked like an obedient memory. Murmurs spread through the ballroom. Cedric raised his voice. The final composition was selected for diplomatic clarity. Vivienne opened the leather case. Eleanor handed her the first letter. This instruction was written by Lord Cedric Wickliffe. She read aloud. "Move the Duchess behind his grace. Her visible injury may distract foreign observers from the authority of Redbourne." Cedric's expression hardened. Vivienne displayed the signature. The second letter bore Helena's hand. "The scar should be softened. The veil must obscure enough of her face to prevent discomfort." Helena stepped forwards. "Private artistic discussions have no place in a state banquet." Vivienne lifted the final document. "This approval bears my husband's signature." The silence deepened. Alexander looked at the paper. He had signed it after a long meeting, telling himself that a portrait could not alter the truth of his marriage. Now the lie stood 20 feet high behind him. Vivienne faced the guests. "This is not a dispute over whether my face is pleasing." Her voice remained steady. "It is a dispute over whether a wife may be erased whenever her existence becomes inconvenient to her husband." Cedric moved between her and the platform. "The Duke has been offered an opportunity to serve his country. You have turned an act of restraint into a public grievance." Vivienne looked directly at him. "You call it restraint because the silence was demanded from someone else." Cedric turned to Alexander. "This ends now." He held out the appointment document. "Take your place on the platform. Accept the office, and her grace will be escorted from the room." Alexander looked towards Vivienne. She did not plead with him. She did not remind him of the nights beside her sickbed or the years before the accident. She merely waited to see what kind of man he would choose to be while everyone watched. Cedric lowered his voice. "If you step away from this position, there will be no second offer." Alexander took the document. Helena exhaled in relief. Then he tore it across the center. The sound carried through the ballroom. Cedric stared at him. Alexander tore it again. "A post that requires me to deny my wife does not require a diplomat," he said. "It requires a liar." Helena seized his sleeve. "Alexander, think carefully." "I have spent 2 years thinking carefully enough to avoid acting honorably." He stepped down from the platform. Cedric's face had gone rigid. You surrender national influence for a portrait. No, Alexander faced the room. I surrender an appointment because I approved the humiliation of my wife and was prepared to profit from it. He pointed towards the altered painting. Lord Cedric proposed that composition. My mother encouraged it, but I signed the approval. No excuse followed, no claim of pressure, no attempt to make ambition sound noble. I told Vivienne the veil protected us both. The truth is that it protected me from the discomfort of defending her. He turned towards the attendants. Remove that portrait. Cedric blocked them. It was commissioned for the embassy. It will never leave this house. Vivienne spoke before Alexander could order its destruction. Do not burn it. He looked at her. Why? Because people should see what erasure looks like when it is painted politely. She asked Clara to display the false portrait beside the original at the exhibition. Alexander agreed, without claiming authority over the decision. Cedric left before the banquet ended. Several ministers followed him. Others remained, uncertain whether they had witnessed scandal or courage. Vivienne did not stand beside Alexander for the rest of the evening. She departed with Clara and Eleanor. Alexander allowed her to go. The next morning, Helena was informed that she no longer controlled Redbourne's invitations, portrait commissions, or ceremonial household. She entered Alexander's study carrying the order. You would remove your own mother for her. I am removing you because you used my authority to diminish my wife. She has made you weak. No, she revealed where I already was. Helena placed the order on his desk. And when she refuses to forgive you, Alexander, look towards the eastern wing. Then I will live with what I earned. He did not ask Helena to leave the family. He removed her power to govern Vivienne's life. That distinction mattered. Vivienne continued the exhibition. The altered Redbourne portrait was placed beside Clara's original sketch, beneath a simple notice. One woman, two versions, only one made with her consent. Crowds continued to arrive. Retired soldiers brought portraits in which their injuries had been hidden. Older women requested paintings that preserved their true faces. Workers asked Clara to show the hands their employers considered too rough for formal display. Vivienne appeared at every public opening without a veil. Alexander attended only after requesting permission. At first, she allowed him to remain as an ordinary visitor. He did not stand beside her or explain himself to the crowds. He listened. He heard how often polite language had been used to turn shame into duty. He began writing letters to every household that had received invitations, excluding Vivienne's name. The letters did not blame Cedric. They stated plainly that Alexander had approved the exclusion, and that it had been wrong. He restored Vivienne's name to every Redbourne register and cancelled all rules governing her appearance. He removed the veils from her wardrobe himself, then sent them to the eastern apartments with a note asking whether she wished them destroyed, donated, or kept. Vivienne chose to keep one, not to wear, to display. Months passed before she invited Alexander to dine with her. They sat in the eastern drawing-room, where he had once offered her a physician instead of an apology. You refused the appointment, she said. Yes. That does not repair what came before. I know. You stood beside me only after I made it impossible for you to remain neutral. Yes. He did not seek kinder wording. Vivienne studied him. Do you still think my scar damages Redbourne? No. Did you ever? Alexander took time before answering. I thought the way others reacted to it damaged my ambitions. I made that difference sound moral. The honesty hurt, but it did not insult her intelligence. And now Now I understand that any ambition requiring your disappearance was already corrupting me. Vivienne looked towards the uncovered mirror. I cannot return to the marriage we had. I am not asking you to. What are you asking? For the opportunity to build something more honest, even if it never becomes what I hope. She did not promise him forgiveness, but she allowed him to return for dinner the following week. Then again a fortnight later. Trust returned slowly, without ceremony. Clara began the new Redbourne portrait in early autumn. The studio windows stood open to natural light. Vivienne wore no veil. Alexander entered after she was already seated. Clara examined the empty space beside her. Where would you like His Grace placed? Before Vivienne could answer, Alexander said, wherever she chooses. Vivienne looked at him. Months earlier, he would have stood automatically at the center. Now he waited. Beside me, she said. Not in front. Clara positioned the chairs at equal height. Alexander sat. The scar on Vivienne's cheek remained clearly visible. So did the distance between their hands. Clara lifted her brush. Alexander looked at Vivienne. May I hold your hand? She did not answer immediately. He waited without moving. Then Vivienne placed her hand upon his. Not because the court expected reconciliation. Not because Redbourne needed a perfect portrait. Because this time, when Alexander looked at her, the doors were open. The artist was watching, and the entire world would see exactly whom he had chosen to sit beside. Clara began to paint. No shadows concealed the Duchess. No veil protected the Duke. And for the first time since the accident, their marriage appeared as it truly was not flawless, not restored by one grand gesture, but visible, equal, and no longer governed by shame.